Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings, and today I'm going to complain about the fact that I hate ampersands. Because I really hate ampersands. I understand the pragmatic need to have something that, can shorten the number of character spaces, especially when you're trying to fit titles into things, and there's all kinds of valid reasons for them, but I really hate them because they fall under that category of things people use in lieu of actually writing out words fully, like grown-up, instead of writing like they're a 13-year-old who is constantly texting because they think that that's how people communicate is by text, and when somebody writes in full sentences with periods and proper punctuation and capitalization, they complain that it makes them sound like they're ancient and aged, and boy, don't I sound like an old person, but I really don't like them, and I never have. So here we are reading Bookshops and Bonedust, and this is my biggest complaint about this book. I think it's also a book that's very confused about what it is, because despite the fact that I enjoyed the heck out of it, it's also, I think, very confused about what it is. And the author's note at the end, in which he discusses how this book is the third, fourth, fifth, whatever, if iteration of a desperate bid to create a sequel to his first book, is, it's interesting. Anyway, so this is a book that is kind of doing the same thing as Patricia Reedy's series, was it Lyra? I never remember things or write them down, and I actually only just thought of this, because, I do this off the cuff. I make stuff up as I go. The thing is that what this is it's described as being low stakes, and in its way it's low stakes because the book opens with the orc, that is the green chick on the cover, fighting her way through an army of the undead and thinking about how she is the most awesomest warrior ever, and then getting severely injured and finding herself basically sidelined from the mercenary army that she had been signed up for because, well, you can't fight the undead with a busted leg. And she had basically had something stabbed straight through her leg, so she's not going to be using it anytime soon. The thing is that after she passes out, she wakes up much later in an inn in a small coastal town in absolute middle of nowhere, where she basically got left behind to rest up and heal and stop, and basically, get better so that she could go back to doing her job as a mercenary. And so this book starts off with her meeting and befriending the owner of a bookshop, and this is, by the way, a high fantasy thing. It frankly feels World of Warcraft inspired in terms of the shape of the characters. Now, granted, I've never played World of Warcraft, but everything I've seen of it, this feels World of Warcrafty in character. Anyway, so she winds up befriending a bookshop owner because she's limping around town and in the process accidentally breaks the bookshop owner's front porch, because the front porch is basically mostly rotted through. It's falling to pieces. Her bookshop is not doing so great, but having a big, strong, hefty orc, accidentally break things doesn't help. But anyway, so the bookshop owner offers her a book to read to kill time, and our heroine decides, her name is Viv, by the way, Viv says, what the heck, I can try this reading a book thing, it's not like I can do anything physical in the meanwhile. And so part of this book is meant, I think, maybe partly as getting to relive the first experience those of us who love reading have when we first discover how awesome reading is. Which, let's be honest, is an experience that I think some people never have, because granted, some people don't like reading for the same reason that I've never vastly liked movies. There are some movies that I like, but for the most part, I just, it's not my thing. And, you know, we all have our things that we look at and we say, you know, objectively speaking, I see why this is good, but I just don't really enjoy it, and it's no reflection on the thing, it's just personal preference. But there are a lot of people out there in the world who don't like reading because nobody ever handed them an interesting book. That is... Now, I know J.K. Rowling is persona non grata, and I'm not going to have that argument with anybody, but the reason why Harry Potter was a boon to so many librarians and teachers was because when the Harry Potter books came out, kids snorked them up. They would actually sit down and they would read the book. And then a lot of them would turn to their teacher or the librarian and say, is there anything else like this? With that, they discovered that reading could be fun because they were handed an interesting story that moved quickly, that was a page turner, and it's a problem that I think there are a lot of people out there who don't discover reading precisely because they're not handed that. They have parents who weren't big readers, so they don't have books in the house, and they go to school and their teachers hand them books that, I mean, the first death of interest in any book is to have a teacher hand it to you and say, here, read this, because, I mean, why would you want to? Unless, you know, you're weird, like my father, who just likes reading everything and enjoyed the books he was assigned in school, which I can't even. I always resented the books in school because I would sit there and I would say, I'm reading this when I could be reading something I like. But the thing is that people who don't... that you have these people who their experiences in reading are TV Guide or, you know, text messaging and stuff they get assigned in school. And the problem with stuff you get assigned in school is some of it's not that fun, and some of it's hard, and some of it's not just hard in a, you know, this is a difficult read because there are complex themes and characters. Some of it's like Shakespeare, where nobody talks like that. And every single word you read in it, nobody talks like that, and so it's like translating a foreign language. And some teacher has the gall to say this is modern English, which is clearly a lie, because this was all written in the, you know, 1600s or 1500s, and that's not modern. And so it's a big problem where I suspect there are a lot of people out there who might be able to get into reading if somebody got there and handed them books that they liked first. And so here's where we have that big key scene in this book, is where the bookshop owner hands Viv a book which is about, it's a sword and sorcery epic, and Viv is captivated precisely because she has been handed a book that is about stuff she's interested in, with an interesting story and fast-moving characters and a dramatic plot, and it grabs her imagination because she'd never had somebody pick a book that she liked before. But that process of her reading the book and discovering how much she actually likes this reading thing it's kind of a fantasy for those of us who like reading. It's a fantasy for teachers and librarians, that there's this quality of imagining finding the perfect book to hand to somebody and say, here, and have them go, oh wow, this book and reading thing is actually kind of cool. And so, you know, obviously Viv having a busted leg and, you know, no ability to do any of her usual pastimes, which are all physical, is obviously kind of a captive audience. But this book, you know, you start off with that, And then she has a minor romance with a local bakery owner. And then the book takes a turn to what seems like it's going to be a cozy mystery, until like the very end is an abruptly dramatic denouement. It's not high adventure, but it sort of becomes abruptly high stakes at the very end of it, and this is sort of where I think the book is internally conflicted. Again, I enjoyed the heck out of this. I kind of actually enjoy it jumping seemingly from genre to genre, because of course you have the sharp cut from high fantasy to, just slice of life, which then takes a sharp cut into, as I said, what appears to be a cozy mystery, and then following that takes another sharp turn abruptly back into standard high fantasy territory. The fact is that this is a book that could actually be transplanted into a modern 21st century idiom with really relatively few alterations. Like this is high fantasy. It's sword and sorcery epic, at least, like background characters in a sword and sorcery epic. But the mentality of everybody is extremely modern, very, very sharply modern. As I said, it's one of the reasons why I look at it and it makes me think kind of in ways of things like World of Warcraft or other video game fantasy epics that sort of, they take place in high fantasy, but everybody talks as though they're from, like, modern New York or Chicago or something. Or, in this case, I suppose, modern backwoods 500-person coastal town. But it's, it feels very, standard, just standard American speech patterns. So, yeah, it's a very good time. And it's a books for book people kind of book. A book of feeling as a person who likes to read a lot, the sense of vindication as Viv discovers reading, the sense of vindication as this bookstore owner gets to save her bookshop, at least a sense of vindication for those of us who, miss bookstores. To be honest, the only reason I don't buy more books is because I don't have space for them, not because I wouldn't buy them if I could. So, yeah. Anyways, this is good, clean fun. This is also a prequel. There is apparently a, first book in the series, and I will probably read that at some point. I can't get it out of the library right now. But yeah. So I think this is probably worth reading, although I'm late to the game because apparently a whole bunch of booktubers have already talked about this, but I'm, not reviewing it, I'm just talking about stuff like how much I hate ampersands. So, yeah. Yes, so this is an entertaining book, and they should have had a bigger space between Bookshops and Bonedust, centered the Bonedust, and had an actual AND in the middle there instead of an ampersand, because ampersands are vile. Yeah, I think that's everything, and I will see you all next week.